All right, welcome back to another episode here at the Abundance.io podcast. We are here in Salt Lake at the Hive with my good friend Sam and his whole door-to-door con crew. It's good to see you, my man. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah, bro. We met at office hours with David Meltzer last year, and I mean, just bonded immediately. We have so many
we were like soul brothers.
Yes.
Like we even look like we were brothers.
I agree. I actually, when I walked on stage, I had made that joke of like, hey, Sam's uglier brother that nobody knows because he's better at marketing than I am.
Love that.
And people were like, kind of like, what? Like they took it for a second. But yeah, there were just so many things that we're talking about, just like kind of right out of the gate about, we're both fathers building big companies, but still get out and have fun and do extreme sports. And like, just, we were talking about, there's no really balancing act to that. It's just like going all in and being just like committed to those things and just like being able to balance those priorities. Like, I just respect you so much for that. And like, I've seen you be such a leader in this industry and bring so many people together. And I'm just really inspired by what you do, man. So I'm glad to be out here.
Thank you. And I'm inspired by you, man. And your golf swing. You played golf last night. He's pretty good.
I'm glad we got to sneak one in.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that you golf. We didn't talk about it the first time. And then on your Instagram a couple of days ago, I saw you guys golf. And I was like, I'm going to bring my clubs to Salt Lake. But then I'm going to VCon after this. I was like, oh, it's going to be a lot to pack those around. So I'm glad we got to sneak one in. And you play golf just like you do everything else. You don't think about it. You just swing hard and freaking
just go. I think that's a thing. Like, I think too many people, it's like I get up this morning, we get up like 5:30 and, I walk out and Dee's in the effing hot tub at like 6. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I felt like hot tubbing. I was like, okay, you want to go on a hike? We're going on a hike. We got workout in. And like, I think too often, like, people are afraid just to do things that they're feeling. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm feeling like we should golf. I'm feeling like we should do this thing. I feel like we should go to Egypt. It's like, whatever the thing is, like, just go.
Just go. We spend so much time or wasting time thinking about it, analyzing it. Oh, do I really want to do this? Like, when you start doing it, that actually combats anxiety and stress, because when you sit around and think about all the things you need to do or that you want to do, you just end up wasting so much time and get overwhelmed instead of just like, okay, this is what needs to happen and I'm just going to do it.
Just do it.
So you've built this amazing company and you've integrated your business vertically in so many different ways. It's like extremely impressive, where you were a master at door-to-door sales and then you decided to build this giant conference. And now you have your coaching and your boot camps and your trips and your leadership. And like, people talk about creating multiple streams of income. And for most people, they think, oh, I got to go out and start like a real estate business. And then I got to go out and start like an exotic car rental business. And then I got to go. It's like, those are all things that you have to learn. And like, you're going to fail at those. You don't have that expertise. So the way that you did it with your superpower has allowed you to excel in so many different ways without having to relearn it. And I think that's a very important lesson for most entrepreneurs to learn. It's like, don't go out and try to recreate the wheel somewhere. It's like, just duplicate what you know and double down on it.
Yeah.
And I know it wasn't always like that for you. Tell us about, let's go back to when you were first getting into entrepreneurship and kind of where this whole thing really started.
Yeah. I mean, entrepreneurship is a journey, and those that are thinking about it or just starting, like, I want to give you guys hope and faith as I kind of tell you mine. I think, some context. I grew up around entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur and he went through the entrepreneurial roller coaster, made a ton of money, lost a ton of money, started big companies like OGO to little ones that never worked, like this bike lock pump thing that you could never get his margins to his right place, right? And so, I remember him telling me, don't do what I did. And he was like, go work for a big company like IBM or Google and just be there for 20 years and work up the ladder. And, I didn't take his advice. But
Thank God you didn't.
But he scared me into it enough to where I waited till I was about in 27, 28 to really start my own company. And I did sales since I was 11. And I think a lot of companies that start, they forget sales are an important piece of a business, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was a door.
It's everything. It's everything. Communication sales. Like, if you can't get a customer, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how badass your product is. Like,
I mean, in case in point, Jordan Peterson came to Door on this last year, right, and he's a philosopher. And he's like, I asked him about, what's your take on sales? What's your door like? And he goes, I started a test and then we couldn't sell it. So then I was trying to pay the sales guys 10%. He's like, I ended up having to pay the sales guys 70% because I couldn't freaking know how to sell it. And he's like, I didn't realize how important sales was. He's like, yeah, it's a lubricant of society.
Yeah.
And so I did door-to-door sales since I was 11. I was 13. I actually started my first business as the gutterman. I have 11 of my friends working for me. And then when I was 18, so 2008, I shipped out and started doing alarm sales. And did that through the end of 15 almost. And I was like, well, I could, I was kind of at a transition, and I then got into solar and was the VP of sales of a solar company. Everybody's asking me like, why don't you start your own? Why don't you start your own? You're really good at sales. And I wanted to plug myself next to somebody that I knew was really good at business. So being the VP, I got to sit in the boardroom. I get to see all the back-end controller, how the pay software worked and all that stuff, which was a 2-year good learning experience where, yeah, maybe I could have made more money on a margin scale doing it myself. But what I learned was a lot more the business side of things, where before I was a sales regional or a manager where I didn't have access to having to structure everything. Like I had to develop technology, but I had a tech team. I had to develop pay structures, but I had a payroll back-end accounting team. I didn't have to sit there and look at spreadsheets. I'm like, this is what I want to pay my guys, and they would do it. Mm-hmm. And so that 2 years was a really cool learning experience for me. And then I kind of got forced into this. Like I wanted to throw a conference. I didn't want to. I was sitting on a rock in a desert for 3 days, fasting and meditating. And if you don't take time to slow down, that like when everybody talks about like, how do you do it all? Like half of it is practicing doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Like there's some real lesson there.
Big time.
When you're doing so much, and we travel to a different country basically every effing month, and we do all sorts of cool stuff, but there's also a practice of sitting. And so I've incorporated that quarterly into my practice. And anyway, so we go and I get this call to be like, you need to throw this event called Door-to-Door Con. And I was like, what? And I was like, no, it's not going to work. But for the next 3-4 weeks after that, it just couldn't leave my head. Like it was like, do this thing. So finally I was like, all right, never been to a conference, never hosted a conference. I'm going to now do this conference thing. And we launch it and got a lot of friction. Like everybody's like, no, I'm not sending my people to that. There's no way. I was still the VP of another company, a competitor of theirs. And so come like December, I was like, I can't serve two masters. Like if people are going to actually show up to this, I can't be a competitor of theirs. Mm-hmm. And the mission was to unify, up-level, bring honor and integrity to this industry because it's full of just scarcity. It was full of backbiting. It was playing an I win, you lose game. And I felt like we needed to shift. And so the mission was pure. There's how do you get people on board with it? And anyway, so it kind of forced me to quit. And the VP was, or the owner was like, well, we'll see you in a couple months. Like, right. What are you doing, man? He's like, good luck, kid. Yeah, good luck. Like, and it kind of put a chip on my shoulder. I was like, dude, I've freaking gone in bat for you for 2 years. And that's how and like the president was like, yeah, good luck, man. I'm supporting you all the way. Like he shows up, he's there, he speaks. And the owner was just like, yeah, we'll see you in a couple months. Like, this is stupid. What are you doing? You're distracted. And, nobody thought it was going to work, which for me, when you put me in a corner like that, that's when I get fiery. Yep. And my team, my guys know, like, I'm pretty chill, dude. But like, when you start putting me in a corner, I'm like, I will go to battle. And anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how it started. Like I didn't, and then we didn't make money on the first event. So it's like, we're sitting there like, looking out what? But that's kind of how I got started.
But there was a big challenge that was happening at that point because you had announced it. You're like, I'm nervous going into this space. It's a new thing for me. And then there's like a competitor or something, right? That started a whole nother thing that was trying to.
So it's a lot of challenge. Like when you set out with a mission, the adversary knows that. Yeah. And so the bigger the mission, the bigger the pull. And you need to realize that. And so if you have this desire to be something great, got to sift through the mud. And so the week of the event, we had about a week prior to the event, we had like 300 tickets sold and negative, 30, 40 grand, 50 grand. And I'm trying to do this thing on a budget. It's not like I'm like have any funds to like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to like fund this thing. I had some money because I'd done good at sales and stuff. So like, I didn't want to like lose money. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to start a business and be like, I lost money. Yeah. Right. So anyway, so I get a call Monday. And it was the old regional that I'd worked for at Vivint. And he was like, hey, just want to give you a heads up, figure I'd give you a warning. This weekend on Saturday, same time as your event, same place down the hall, we're actually throwing an event ourselves, an event, and we're going to do Grant Cardone will come in, Todd Peter, the owner's going to speak, and it's free. You should send all your people to our event. I said, why would I do that? Why don't you just bring him and have him speak at our event? Like, we're already doing an event. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. If we want to recruit, we want to this our event. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this real? Like, and I hang up. I was like, I called managers and I was like, hey, is this a thing? Like, do you know something going on this weekend with a big keynote? Like, no. But yeah, okay, it's a joke. And then they call me back in 2 hours and they're like, dude, is this what you're talking about? Grant Cardone, that's messed up. Like, that's free at the same time. Like, what are they trying to do? And I was like, oh shit.
This is happening. This is going down.
This is like really happening. Like, I don't have any Grant Cardone coming to my event. I don't got no free. Like, I'm making people pay for this. Like, and I was like, I'm already losing money. Like, this is so dumb. And other people caught wind that had previously worked at the event because they were kind of the big, bad, like, orange giant that was the bully, very scarcity thinking. And they didn't ever want to play ball. And they didn't want behind it. And all of a sudden, everybody else starts to get behind me because they're like, screw them. Like, how dick move of this? Like, let's go to Sam's event and just like get behind him. What do we need to do to support him? And so we ended up with 800 people at our first event, which was pretty good for a first event. Right?
Yeah, it's like 3 times what you were expecting.
Yeah.
And you had this big challenge come in that when you're rowing in the right direction, like the right people will show up. And it's like when you see those challenges, it's just the universe, God, spirit, and the world saying you are going in the right direction. Like you said, you want to go to that next bigger goal, like you're going to have more challenges come along the way. And that was just like, hey, how serious is Sam about this? And people saw that your integrity and, like you said, that unity and let's all win together. And people were vibing with that more so than, somebody kind of making malicious moves. And in these bigger moves, you'll see where people, like, their heart and their soul truly lie.
You'll see a lot of things come out of the woodwork. And over the last 6 years of business, I've definitely seen colors come out. I've seen situations where I have to make a decision of where my integrity is going to stand or where my abundance versus scarcity is going to play. And it's hard when you have competitors. And so they were looking at this thing as a land grab of recruiting. I was looking at this thing as like, no, we need to better this effing industry because it has a bunch of shit thrown at it. It has a lot of bad actors. It has a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, let's fix this. Let's give door to door a better effing name. Let's go. Because I believe it's a great industry to be in. It's a great opportunity. It's a great form of selling and it's ethical. If you do it right.
Right.
But it gets a bad rap. And so anyway, what's cool is halfway through day 1, Friday, Saturday, then they have their event. Half my audience leaves to go see Grant Cardone. Well, 20 minutes in, they all come back, or a lot of them do. And I was like, why is everybody flooding back in? And it was during this guy's talk. So I started asking him, like, dude, that was a shit show. That was terrible. Grant Cardone called this kid fat. And he said he'd kill himself if he was that fat. He starts calling Todd's wife easy, like all this stuff. And like, dude, like wild stuff that you're just like, what? They have a thing that says hashtag only Vivint on the stand. It's in big printed out foam letters. And so they start a movement on social media where I kept screenshotting it just out of like my own like personal like happiness. But it was said hashtag only unity, meaning our whole conference starts this viral hashtag only unity where they're over here hashtag only Vivint, and people felt the energetic difference between scarcity and abundance, like in a very easy to see contrast.
Yeah.
Like from walk down the hall and feel scarcity and walk down the hall and feel abundant, because that's what our full message was. It's like, come as a team, learn as a team, leave as a tribe. And we were like, how do we come together and help one another and have friendly competition instead of being malicious competition? And, sales is a battlefield sometimes. You're out there in the streets and you see competitors in your effing neighborhood, like people get malicious and you see people stealing deals and you see people stealing reps, and it's a battlefield. And so anyway, they'll come back and it just like spring loaded my wings of energy to like, okay, this is a real thing. Like this industry needs it and they need a leader to go like help this. And, whatever you're an entrepreneur in, you need to not look at it as like, how do I just be so transactional? Because sometimes like the fruit of your labors might be in the consistency and the relationships, because 3 years later, that guy spoke, the guy that threw the event spoke at my event. 4 years later, I get a Todd Peterson phone call. I'm like, dude, I never thought what you're doing would work. proud of what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like that stuff comes around once people see that like what you're doing is actually pure and good. But sometimes people won't trust that until you've shown true consistent value and stayed consistent with your message. And it would have been easy for me to throw rocks at them during that. I didn't post one thing. I didn't screen. I was trying to mitigate some of the damages going to Vivint because like people are leaving Vivint as a company because they embarrass themselves. And then when we were like, hey, how can I support you? Like I played the high road the entire time and still tried to and still think they're a great company. For me, it was like when you show up as a leader and an entrepreneur with consistent value systems, the truth will always prevail. And sometimes when you're transactional, you can fool somebody for a week. You can fool somebody for a year. But like when you go consistently over the long haul, you look at the companies that thrive and survive, they're the ones that have a good value system. And they're not just looking at things as so transactional. And this mission is much bigger than me. It's a movement. It's not me. I'm just kind of creating a space for people to feel safe, doing what they love, which is door to door and sales and making money and changing their life.
And that was my experience at Door to Door Con. We met. I was like, hey, how can I support you? Like, come speak at the event, come get a booth, like just come see what I'm doing. And I had like a weird connotation with door to door sales guys. The only time I had somebody come, they're trying to sell like a Kirby vacuum to me. And this kid was just like trying to get a sale so bad. And I was like, yeah, whatever, man, come in. And he's like, got the vacuum out and he's doing the whole thing. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, but is all this stuff organic? Like, you know, I got kids and dogs and stuff. He's like, oh yeah. I'm like, so you would eat it? He's like, absolutely. And the dude pours the soap into his mouth and drinks some of the soap out of the freaking Kirby vacuum. I was like, bro, I'm just kidding. You'll be all right. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm going to be dead. And I was like, the commitment of like to his product. I was like, bro, you're going to do great in life. I don't know if it's going to be Kirby vacuums for you, but you're going to do big things. That was really my only interaction with the door-to-door industry. But then you see the guys like beating the streets, and I always like didn't really understand it. So then coming to your event and seeing the way that you helped everybody level up and like you said, bring everybody together, like the vibes were so good there. People were so awesome. Like the integrity was there and like, it was rad, man. It was really, really cool to see what you created and how you kept that message from the beginning consistent all the way through. And that's why you had 800 people at your first event. And how many did you have at this last event? There's like 3,000 people 6 years later. And not to mention the entire floor that was filled with vendors.
Yeah, 80-something vendors.
Unbelievable. So I know that there were some more challenges that kind of came up from there. And I feel like when you do go all in, that's when you can really get to the level that you've been. Because at that point, it sounds like you just hit the ground running.
No, I burnt the ships. Like I had quit.
Yeah.
Now I got a chip on my shoulder. Him saying like, I'll see you in a couple months, which then I'm like, I can't even go back to that.
Yeah,
like,
I ain't going back to that.
Yeah, like I'm not going back. Like, and it was a good home. I still have a good relationship with him. I spoke at their event like a month ago. You know what I mean? It's like a keynote, which was a cool reunion, right? And so I remember day one of DDDCon, and one of the keynotes looks at me and he's like, "What are you selling tomorrow?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What am I selling?" And he's like, "Well, you got 800 people in a room. Aren't you going to sell them something?" I was like, "I wasn't planning on it," but he's like, "Well, what are you going to do to make money after this?" And I was like, I haven't thought that far, dude. I was just trying to get ready for this different event. I was up till midnight painting up in red lettering to the stage and shit. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know. I didn't even prepare my own keynote. Like, everybody's like, Sam, you're up. I was like, oh, shit. I like meditate for like 2 minutes and then get up on stage and I'm like, well, here's my keynote, ad lib. Like, you know, I had just balls to the wall trying to get to do the event. So he's like, well, how about this? Let's put together a mastermind. So we put together a mastermind and we pitched that the next day. We had like 7 or 8 people sign up and I was like, I made money. So that floated me and it funded, you know, obviously I had some savings or whatever, but like for a whole year, I didn't make a paycheck. I had to hire employees. And when you pay a guy 60 grand a year, well, then that's 60 grand out of your pay that you were going to take and that you have to pay. And I think a lot of people don't realize that every time, you know, and then you get 2 people and you're like, so I have to make plus tax 120,000 plus, you know, all the marketing and all the equipment and all the stuff, right? Like damn. So all the money just kept getting funneled in and I'd go do an onsite, they'd pay me money and it would just go right to something else. And I'm like, damn, I'm working for free right now. And it was really tempting sometimes to go back to, you know, everybody and their dogs like, Sam, when you come work with me, where are you going to like, come work here? I'll give you $1 million. Like the temptation was very, you know, and I knew how I could make hella money doing what I used to do. But the mission was like, I'm on a different mission.
Yeah.
And that was always my response. They're like, dude, but you'd kill it. Start this. I still get text messages today. Bro, we should start an installer. We should do this. And I'm like, different mission, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's an important piece.
It's a very powerful thing. When you learn to say no to these other shiny objects, where it's like, there could be more money in the short term, could fulfill you in the short term, but then you're saying no the long term. And like you were seeing down the road what this could be. And it's so incredible what you've created to where now you've vertically integrated all of your knowledge without having to go out and start an installer deal, without having to go out and start these other businesses and real estate or whatever that you don't have it, that you're not an expert in. You're like, man, now we have the mastermind. Now we have the event. Now we have the boot camp. Now we can have the sales training, but it's all under that same umbrella. So it's very easy for you to execute on. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand is they want to go out and create other streams of income outside of their superpower, right? Yeah. It's like their zone of, incompetence. And that's where people fail and they get overwhelmed. And there's all these other unknowns. Like you said, it's like, well, I started the conference, but then, I don't have anything to sell. And then my keynote and then like getting other people in. And then when are we going to run this thing again, right? But
yeah. That's another thing. Like, I have to do this next year?
Yeah.
I think people are expecting it. I'm like, oh, shoot, you're right.
You're right. Man, I was looking right here, but that led to the next thing. So as you continued to grow that, I mean, what were some of the other big lessons that you learned after that first event that now has led you into, running this next year will be 7 years straight, right?
Yeah. A lot. Like the thing about being an entrepreneur is you get to be like a Swiss Army knife. And hopefully leading into your entrepreneurship journey, you've built skills here. Like I had sales down. Like you asked me to sell you these shoes, I'll freaking outsell Vans like no other, you know what I mean? Like, but I didn't know marketing. Like it wasn't like I ran marketing. My marketing was door to door. It was knock on door, talk to a human and close.
Yeah.
Right? Like that I can do. Yeah. Get me in front of somebody, bro.
Yeah.
But what happens when you're not in front of anybody? I'm like, oh shit, like how do I get in front of people? So I started going to events and I was like, I can get in front of people there, but they're like, I start reading Russell Brunson stuff on ClickFunnels. I start reading, marketing books and I start being like, okay, like I need to become a marketer. So then I became a good marketer. It's like, I remember sitting down at Gary Vee speaking at some roofing conference and he's bashing on door to door. And he's like, if you don't have a podcast and if you don't have a brand, you're an idiot. And I'm over and door to door is dying. And I was like, what do you mean, Gary? I was like, F you, bro. And I was like, I was like, screw you, Gary Vee. And I go talk to him afterwards. Like, yeah, I do door to door. I'm going to run door to door experts. He's like, yeah, that's going to be dead in 2 years. And I was like, F you, right? Like,
there's another challenge. Fine.
I was like, backed into a corner again. Bet. So I started a podcast. I started, and I'm like, damn it. And I could like either eat my own humble pie and learn, or I could keep getting kicked in the nuts.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's learn marketing. And then, 3 years in, I realized that I don't know where any money is. Like, I'm like, I have money in the bank, but I don't know what it came from. And that's how I ran. Like my books, I went through 4 different bookkeepers. I had dudes steal from me. I had, guy file my taxes. I'd go look at my bank account and I'm like, look, the bank statements say I had earned this million and you said I earned this million. And I was like, those numbers are very different. What do we file taxes on?
Yeah.
So I was like, I didn't collect that, dude. Like, that's not what I'm going to pay the tax on. And,
right.
And you start having these conversations like, shit, maybe we should look at accounting. Like, I need to learn QuickBooks, damn it.
Yeah.
So then you learn QuickBooks, and then you learn this, and then you learn that. And
like, a bookkeeper isn't a CPA. A CPA isn't a tax consultant. A tax consultant isn't like a family office.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh, there's levels of that game. Okay.
So I need enough to be deadly is what I call it.
Yeah.
Let me give them enough information to be deadly. So I can audit my books. I can audit my marketing. I can audit my freaking sales guys. I can audit my ops. I can audit making sure my customers are happy. And I can feel like less anxiety or out of control. Because a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're feeling like you're out of control. So I needed to train and trust the journey, right? Like every scenario, like just barely had a guy steal a couple $100,000 from me. And that's not fun when you're running a business, but good thing you're making enough money to where a couple $100,000 is not like killing you. But the lesson I learned is I was like, oh, there are people that feel okay about committing fraud. Cool. I just would have never assumed anybody that I broke bread with, gave a great job, paid, would feel justified to steal from me. Like that, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm going through the same thing. We talked about it yesterday.
And I'm like, oh, how do we protect ourselves from this? And, my billing guy comes up to me. He's like, well, my accounting course, they talk fraud. And they talk about this, and they beat it into our heads. And I'm like, maybe there's something there. So I start talking to other big entrepreneurs. I'm like, it's not if somebody's stealing it from you, it's when and how often.
And how much.
Yeah, how much. And I was like, oh. And I was like, that's a common thing. He's like, yeah, that's why they probably talk about it in your accounting class so much. I'm like, oh, that's just part of being an entrepreneur, maybe. And, the guy gets caught red-handed and wants to commit suicide and this and that. And we're like, don't kill yourself for every couple $100,000. Like, and for us, it's like, I've been in business long enough to where it's like, I'm not losing sleep over life. But to some people, when like big problems like this hit, they see it as like life ending or devastating. So when life hits you and you get a fraud or you get this or customer cancels or whatever, you have to roll with the punches. And I think as an entrepreneur, if you don't have that thick skin, and luckily I did door to door, like I'm like, yeah, kick me again, meet me up, call the cops on me, spit on me, I don't care, like let's go, like that's door to door, bro, like next door, man.
How many times have you been spit on?
Yeah, a lot. Like I've been pushed, I've been dog sicked on me, shotguns pulled on me, put in jail, like handcuffed, thrown out, like dude,
wow.
I'm talking like
you got
all
arrested
the shit.
for knocking out someone's
Oh yeah, dude, like I'm talking like all the shit you can think of times it by 2.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh yeah, it's not as bad as like getting freaking So like, luckily I had my thick skin. So call that a soft skill. Where I think somebody leaves a W-2 job and they're like, hey, I'm making 60 grand. I want to start a business. I think one of the skills they probably never learned was getting their face kicked in and learning how to be 1099.
Yeah.
That's a soft skill. Like a carnivore is very different than an herbivore. I spoke at an effing sales event 2 weeks ago in Arizona. 90% of the room was car sales guys. I'm like, hey guys, raise your hand if you're in car sales. Like, oh, raise your hand if you do like door to door or outbound. And like, well, a couple of people raise their hand. I was like, my people, what's up? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. So I look at them all and I said, you guys are a bunch of pussies. And I was like, and now you all are probably going to hate me right now. But I said, the problem is you're sitting on an effing lot. And if somebody shows up to your lot, there's 5 of you vultures that are like, hey, who's going to get him? Okay, you guys got your turn. Okay, good. All right. That's it. But if nobody shows up to the lot, you're just waiting. And I said, most people, they had a normal job of waiting. Their job was when somebody told them to do something, they did it. And they're trying to do the least amount of things possible. And now all of a sudden they're expected to be an entrepreneur that no one's telling you to do shit. You got to think for yourself. And nobody's babysitting you. Nobody's pushing you to go knock more doors and call more people and close more clients and do follow-up and this and this and this and study and learn and do. That's on you, bro. But you are so used to being told what to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, you're in course sales. Maybe you're a good closer. Maybe if I sat down in front of you, you'd have some great lines for me. But the problem is you only talk to 3 people a day. Or if you're in door-to-door sales, you're going to 100 effing doors a day. If you're actually going out and hunting and you're taking people from zero to hero, meaning they're sitting on their couch watching the freaking Warriors game and you're like, hey, I know you were never thinking about that damn vacuum, but now you're thinking about the vacuum. And they're like, well, I'm busy. I'm eating dinner. Like, and I know you're eating dinner, but now we're talking about vacuums. You know what I mean? Like, you have to take it from absolute no, not even wanting this shit, to now I'm sitting in your living room and selling you something. And that is a carnivore, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I think as an entrepreneur, you got to say, how do I like awaken the carnivore? How do I awaken this? Like, I need to be a hunter. And when you bring in a hunter mentality as an entrepreneur, which some of the people that start businesses never ever have felt that, they've never been in that scenario. Now you are. And that's where I'd say practice it. Like, it's a practice you have to be intentional about. And then it comes naturally with time.
Big time. And, you know, with over 25,000 students coming through Abundance and teaching people how to start a business, how to become an entrepreneur, that's like the biggest difference between the people that become very successful and the people that don't, is the people that adopt that carnivore mentality of like, I got to go out and hunt. It's like, we've shown you how much opportunity is out there.
Tons.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And I'm like, why would people steal from me? I'm like, we live in America.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, if I went to Nigeria and like somebody stole my like watch, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, you need it.
Yeah.
Like, we're in America, dude. Like, get off your ass.
There's like so much opportunity because in one of our programs, we teach marketing for local business owners. And people are like, oh, I don't know any business owners. I'm like, go walk down Main Street and count how many businesses are right down there that you've probably walked into 1,000,000 times. That's your customer. They already know you. You already buy a coffee from them. You already get your hair cut by them. You already have them come to your house and fix your electrical lights. There's opportunity freaking everywhere, but they're not going to walk up to you and say, hey, Sam, I need marketing from you. I need you to help me. I need you to help me with diet or mental state or whatever. It's like, no, you have to go out and find those opportunities and learn to communicate. When people are like, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur, the first thing you need to do is understand sales and communication. And more importantly, learn how to listen. Learn how to listen. So many people wait for the next thing that they want to say. And I watch so many people talk themselves out of deals, talk themselves out of a client, talk themselves out of a relationship, talk themselves out of a marriage. You know what I mean? It's like, just sit and listen, learn to communicate. If you do that, you will grow a successful business. You will have a successful marriage. You will have successful friendships.
Yep.
You got to learn that one core skill. And then you can go find those people that are great at marketing. You can go find those people that are great at accounting. You can go find those things. But if you're a great communicator, you're able to find those people and you'll surround yourself with them so that you can go and build, this big empire that you've built.
And I think I call it death by business cards. Everybody wants to go show their mom the new t-shirt and the logo they made and the website that they created and the business cards they've made. And they spend 6 months doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, where's your revenue, bro?
Yeah.
So when I first started, it was like, I don't effing have a website. Guess what? It's me. Here I am.
I am my website.
I am my website. I am my sales. I am my person. And I'm going to get some revenue. And that's what kept us alive. I wasn't afraid to be like, well, everybody, you can call it imperfect action, but it's better than perfect inaction.
That is the value in our company. That is our main principle, right when you come in.
Send it. It's we talked about, I'm spending $50,000 on the studio. Guys, think about that. I have 8 or 9 cameras just for this room coming in. And, we're brand new. We retrofitted this for today. But what I started with was a little Canon on a refrigerator in my basement kitchen that I used. I had to open the refrigerator door and set it on the refrigerator shelf. And then I just had one of those blank white pieces of paper in the background. Echoey, I had no effing mics. It was so bad, so bad. I bought one of those Amazon lights for $50. And that was my studio. Well, I built an entire training platform that was now doing, a couple $100,000 every month. But the first probably $200,000-$300,000 of sales was based on videos of me in my basement kitchen with a crappy mic, but I was solving a need.
Yep.
And everybody has these fancy videographers and teams and editors and all this shit. I was sending it to some dude in Serbia that was $4 an hour. It's still with me today. It's not $4 an hour anymore. But he would edit them. I'd film them. I didn't know I wasn't a camera guy. I was all right, start videos, right? And it was that me taking action and just getting out there and not being afraid to be look bad. That is what people actually resonated with. People were like, I love that he just does it. Because I was like, it's not about the look. It's about what am I giving and am I giving him value? I'm like, don't care what it looks like. Did this blow your mind? Well, yes. Okay, cool. Are you willing to pay for it? Yes. Cool. Let's talk now.
I literally went back and looked at some of my first marketing videos that I had on YouTube. I was talking about SEO back in 2015. And yeah, it was just terrible. I had my little Apple headphones plugged in. It's kind of crackly and in my living room when I was living in this tiny little apartment. But I would make these videos for attorneys and dentists, and it was low quality, but the amount of value that I was going into and breaking down everything that they needed, it's those videos ended up making me hundreds of thousands of dollars because I was just, I'm not going to go spend all this money to build this big studio without clients. I'm just going to take the action, get out there. I'm going to get better at it. The more I do this, the more I work that muscle, I'm going to get better at communicating and showing value and start to strike a chord with people. And so I'll show my students some of my first videos and they're like, wow. Because they see me now, you're so well-spoken, you have a podcast and a platform. Guys, you can create your own platform right now. It's literally in your pocket.
Dude, I literally 300 and something episodes on DDD podcast. Still to this day, every 10th podcast is probably me setting up a phone right there and being like, hey, we're in Chicago. You'd be a good guest. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so you'll be listening, it'll be good audio or whatever. And then it's a phone. I'm and guess what? Did you like the podcast? Maybe you had to turn up your volume on your phone this one. I don't even care, dude. The people what gets in your way is you care too much. And I think people care too much about the wrong things. Like you said, you're getting in the way. We're not listening, but the reality is we're actually freaking ourselves out more than the customers sitting there going, no, I actually want this. And they're really? You do want this? They're yeah. realize there's people that want your service. There's people that want your product. There's people that want to do business with you. If you show up authentically with good values and like you care. And so it's like, you're getting in your own way because you don't think somebody's going to write you a check for 20 grand or for 100 grand or whatever you were selling, $50. They will. And then go deliver. And then they're going to tell their friends and then do it again and more and more and more.
We always say out-care the competition. That's what it always comes down to. Because when people know that you're actually listening, your heart's in it, you actually care about them, and you genuinely know that you can solve their pain and actually give them a solution, they will buy from you.
Yeah, care more about them
Yes.
and how they look than caring about how you look.
And that's when my business really grew, because I was like, oh, I think I can get 3,000 from this customer. You know, I'm going to really focus on that. And then like, I wouldn't land that deal. And I remember my very first client that I got, it was a limousine company out of Los Angeles. And I was just cold calling because like my mentor at the time was like, if you ain't got business, you better be
On the
smiling
freaking
and down.
phones.
Get on the freaking phone. And I was like, what am I going to say? He's like, I don't give a shit. Get on the phone and talk to people. So I did. And I started calling about after about the fifth or sixth person like kind of hung up on me or didn't answer. Finally, this guy, Andy, he was still a client until about a year ago. He actually passed away, but he was a client for like 5 or 6 years. And I said, hey, I got this, I noticed that you have limousines and party buses, and are those fully booked out all the time? And he's like, no. I'm like, well, what are you doing to solve that? He's like, I don't really know. We're doing this, and this. And I said, well, what's working and what isn't working? So, well, we're getting a little bit of traction from, hotels and meet with concierge, but other than that, I don't have like a proven system. I said, well, I'd love to come out and buy you guys lunch and just see if my system could add value to your business. That's like literally all I said. He's like, yeah, sure. Come down to the spot. So when I go down there, I didn't have a big presentation figured out. I didn't even have like a button down shirt, I think at the time, and just showed up in my little old beat up Toyota pickup truck. I parked down the street so he didn't see me, and walked in and just sat down and we just started asking them questions about their business. And I found out like they didn't have websites that converted. They didn't have any SEO figured out. And I said, well, like this is what your competitors are doing. Would you like me to do that for you? Because this is how much traffic they're getting. He's like, absolutely. What's the cost? I said, well, you have these 5 different, services that you want to provide. Let's build out a channel for each one of those. And they're about $1,000 a piece. He's like, fantastic. Let's start with 2. I said, great. Which did you want to start with? He said, party buses and luxury cars. I said, great. So he wrote me a check for $2,000 right there on the spot. We weren't even talking about numbers. Like, what do you actually need? You need 2 systems? Fantastic. Wrote me a check. I couldn't even believe it was happening. I went out in the parking lot, got in my old truck, and was like, just started bawling because I was like, this is a real thing now. Like that was like the first success that I had in my entrepreneurial journey. And when I look back at that conversation, it was me literally just sitting down, listening to them. And actually, I knew that I could give them the service that they actually needed, not what I wanted to sell them or what that monetary value needed to be. And so I think over the years, eventually we got to pay $5,000 a month for like 6 years.
So cool.
Do the math on that. And literally would have continued to be my client, but he got hit on a motorcycle and died. But, we built a great relationship out of that. And, some of my clients from my agency that are still with me today are literally the ones that I've built the deepest relationship with.
Definitely.
Where we talked about climbing and their family. And
I tell my customer success people, I say, do you realize that they never even use this, but they just pay because they like me? Like some clients, I'm like, I guarantee you, they just like me, and that's why they pay. Because I'm like, when was the last time you talked to them? Well, like 6 months ago. I was like, okay. So let's look at this thing. But like I call them up, they're like, bro, yeah, man. Like, I'm like, God, how do we help you more?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I care more than you care. And I was like, but there's this loyalty to like, I have a relationship with them where I can call them up, they can call me up and like, they know me. But I'm like, well, how do I scale that? So now it's like the next level is like, how do I teach my sales guys to then have relationships with each one of their people? How do I teach my success team how to have a relationship with each one of their people? So I actually fly my customer service people around the country and meet with every one of our customers.
Wow.
So they literally go to the companies, they film, they edit, they work with them, and then they call them every freaking month. And I said, your job is to be their partner, not their like customer success person that's in India, but you are a partner with them to make sure that they are having a success in this. And so like, I found that that's been like a huge, and our retention is like stupid. Like, I'm like, they shouldn't cancel. I don't know why they're still paying us, but we have such a good retention system which that creates the reoccurring, which then that creates some security for you to scale.
100%. And it goes back to that like, know, and trust. People really overlook that, and people just say, oh, work with people you like, know, and trust. But like, there is so much that goes into that, right? Because they're going to like you first, and that's the only reason why they're going to buy. And then eventually they're going to get to know you, and then eventually they're going to get to trust you. And when you can hit all three of those, it's like, that's when you build lifelong partnerships. That's when you build lifelong clients. And people really got to look at like relationship equity and looking at it at the long term. And it's like, if you're trying to get that sale or that partnership like day one, like, it probably ain't going to happen. Your closing rate's going to drop a lot. But when there's rapport and build up or follow up, and you genuinely care about them to know that your product will fit, it's like, that's when you see businesses really start to scale. And like with Abundance, we have an entire team that is very like reaching out and checking up and accountability calls and connecting people into the group. And there's been people in our group that have never taken action, but are so grateful to be here because like, I just love being around you people. Like, I just love being around like the high energy and the positivity and the abundance mindset and the events that you guys do. And like, but it's improved my marriage. It's improved my physical well-being. It's improved my mental well-being just because I grew up in a very toxic world, and just being able to hear your guys' calls, like, that's enough for me. That was worth the investment. And like, I never looked at that before, but we started doing like a lot of outreach to really find out like where people are at. And that was some of the conversations we're getting back. Like, I don't even care about the business. I just want to be around you guys. I thought, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. That's literally like, when you come to that realization sometimes of like, why are my customers continuing to pay me? And that's the realization you get. You're like, cool. Because are you in a business where it's just to give them a service, or is it to create change and transformation in them? And I had that moment. I take masterminds all over the world, and we're in Guatemala. And, we have a CEO group of about 90 CEOs right now. And I look at this lady, and she was like, Sam, I paid you your, 30, 50 grand or whatever she paid. And she's like, I signed up for this thinking I'm going to get business training for you to change my life. And I was like, so did we give you the business? She's like, I don't even like pay attention to how to do business shit. It's good, but I'm just drinking my Kool-Aid on this stuff.
Yeah.
And her business in turn has 20x'd over the last 3 years. You know what I mean? And I have my film guy right now in Maryland filming her as the story. And I was like, this short little CEO running a roofing company, just barely getting by, life completely in a new trajectory 3 years later. And she was like, I will forever pay you. She's like, I don't care what you do. I just will be there. So when we went to Peru, she's like, I'm there. What is ayahuasca? And she was stoked out of her effing mind. And she was like, I just need to be around you all the time, whatever it is. And I'm like, cool. Because everything I do is intent is to create change and create an impact and create a difference for somebody.
And that's what people will really see. Like you said, with that consistency of showing up for your people and showing up for yourself. It's like, when they see that continue to happen, it's like, wow, Sam and his people are the real deal. Because some people are so transactional and want that quick win. It's like you said, you can only convince people or trick people or get people to buy into you for 6 months, a year, but it never lasts.
Yeah.
It never lasts. And, for first time entrepreneurs that are getting started, I think that's my biggest challenge to them is like, think for the long term, because in this world, we're taught to think short term. Like, how do we get those quick dopamine hits? It's like, how do we get those quick wins? Most people are only looking 6 months to a year into the future. When you start looking like 5 years, 10 years, do you want to be doing exactly what you're doing right now in 10 years? If not, you need to change it.
Yeah.
If you're like in a toxic relationship that you don't see being with them for 10 years, why are you in it right now?
I think so many people are in such short-term games. Like, they know in their heart of hearts, this isn't where they want to be, but they're not willing to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in in the heart of hearts, I knew I wasn't supposed to be with my first wife, even before we got married. And that was a hard thing to be part of, to finally come to the sense of like, why did I drag this out so long? And everything happens exactly as supposed to happen, but like, I was so afraid of what everybody's going to think, right? Mm-hmm. And I knew in the heart of hearts, I didn't want to be doing, solar sales forever. And I was like, what is, and challenging yourself and saying, what is it that is your next chapter? What is it that your, real calling And I wrote a book called The Self-Experience, and I'd highly recommend going and checking that out. It's with an XP, not EXP, but it's on Amazon or our website or whatever. But it's all about really coming to the conclusion of like, what's your own self-experience? It's like, what is your experience going to be for you? Because if you're just experiencing everybody else's life, but you've never really tapped into your own, you gotta watch the years go by and be like, where did time go? You know what I mean? Like, what, why did I waste so much of my life grinding and living someone else's dream and not being stoked? So like, for me, I intentionally live. I have the lifestyle design here. It's a 6-page template on a sheet, and it's freaking sick. And every day I'm like, how do I create life? And the coolest part about entrepreneurship, in my opinion, is it's when you finally woke up to like, you are a creator. And we all have a creator in us. You're